This is when the British woke up to their potential and they realized, hold on, we are civilizationally superior, our religion is superior, our color is superior. We are white and these are blacks, right? They are blackies. They call the Indians blackies, right? They didn't use the word Negro necessarily in India, but they used the word blackies. Most Muslim rulers in the world today are weak. They are weak. They are not weak because they don't have power. They are weak because they are mentally weak. They don't find the courage to speak the truth when it has to be spoken. They don't find the courage to confront the enemy. They don't find courage to unite the Muslims.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to another episode of the Father and Son podcast. This is part 2 of the previous episode. And in the previous episode, we discussed a lot of things. We discussed, Aurangzeb. We discussed Jahangir. We discussed the Taj Mahal. We discussed some factors to do with when the Mughal Empire was on the rise and when it was, at its highest, if we can say. And then we went on to discussing the decline. And hopefully, inshallah, this episode will be the last episode of this series on the Mughals. Obviously, it's very, very brief. We're covering, it's like a brief timeline that we're going through with some side benefits. We do go off track, but that's also beneficial, inshallah ta'ala. So, we left off, one of the last people we discussed was Nadir Shah, who invaded from Persia and looted the Sultanate. And then we were going to continue from there, I guess.
Thank you so much. Again, this is the second episode of the decline part of the Mughal Empire. Okay, we discussed a lot of details. So I want to, at the same time, highlight one specific aspect of our podcast is that we might mention random things that come to our mind.
It's beneficial.
Okay, well, yeah, we wanna keep this spontaneous in the sense that if some beneficial point comes up, we want to elaborate on it. So it's not necessarily a digression. It's actually extra detail that you may benefit from. But again, sticking to our topic of the decline of the Mughal Empire. So Nadir Shah, as we mentioned, was the Afsharid ruler of Persia who had invaded in 1739 and he broke the back of the Mughal Empire. Okay, Muhammad Shah was ruling at the time, and Muhammad Shah was already seen as a debauched Mughal emperor who was into drinking and watching dancing girls and his court was not known to be the most noble of courts, basically, if you put it politely. He was even called by some later historians Muhammad Shah Rangila. Rangila means someone who likes to party. He was like a party boy, right? So even if you see his images painted by Mughal painters rather, okay, you will see him smoking the hookah. The hookah is basically the 18th century shisha, right? So he's smoking the hookah and he's watching dance. He's playing with hawks. Okay, he's basically like a figure who's not really into ruling. He's not very interested in ruling. He just wants to enjoy. He has a harem full of women who are around him. They are pleasing him. He's spending a lot of time with his women at the court, right? And there is an apocryphal story about him as well, that this is how declined the Mughal Empire and the Mughal emperors had become, that when Nadir Shah was closing close to Delhi, when he was coming close to Delhi with his forces, Muhammad Shah was being warned repeatedly that he is now very, very, very close. And there is a very famous phrase that is attributed to him. He said, "Hunuz Dilli durast." Okay, right now, Delhi is very far. So he kept saying Delhi is far, Delhi is far. He's not that close, in other words, right? Although this statement actually comes from Nizamuddin Awliya, one of the 13th century Muslim sages from Delhi, who had said this, again, according to the legend, right? Hunuz Dilli Duras, but that's another topic. We're not going to get into that. So Muhammad Shah has been depicted by historians in this light, that he was an incompetent, very much into partying kind of emperor. He wasn't interested in, he had left his ruling to his governors, okay? In the north, he had the Shia governor of Awadh, okay? And in the south, he had Nizam, who was taking care of the Deccan region, the southern region, right? So long as these strong governors are there, the Mughal Empire was still intact. But then after the defeat, after the Persians came in 1739 and they defeated the Mughal Empire and occupied Delhi, that kind of broke the Mughal prestige. Now, when Nadir Shah, having looted, returned to Persia and died soon after, Nadir Shah was killed in his tent in 1747. So literally 8 years after he invaded India. Maybe someone's prayer against him. Allahu Alam, who knows? Because there was a lot of oppression, a lot of rape and killing and looting and pillaging that took place in Delhi after his invasion. He actually gave a free hand to his soldiers for 3 days. They were looting Delhi for 3 days, right? At the time, many people, they came to Shah Waliullah complaining about it. Shah Waliullah's quarter was spared for some reason, right? He was still himself personally present in Delhi when all of this looting took place. And he was very disturbed by it. So when he went back, within 8 years, in 1747, he was killed in his tent. And his treasure was occupied by one of his lieutenants called Ahmad Shah. Ahmad Shah Abdali, later on the king of Afghanistan, the founder of the Durrani dynasty, very powerful, very, very influential militarily and economically dynasty. Ahmad Shah was one of the lieutenants of Nadir Shah, a young man at the time in his mid-20s. So when Nadir Shah was killed in his tent, assassinated, Ahmad Shah was a very close associate of his. He realized that Nadir Shah is killed, so he occupied the treasure. So he took the treasure with him. With that treasure came the famous diamond. Which one?
The
Koh-i-Noor, man.
The Koh-i-Noor.
Yes, the Koh-i-Noor. So the Koh-i-Noor diamond actually was on the Mughal throne. It was studied inside the Mughal throne.
Interesting.
Okay. There were 2 diamonds studied in the Mughal throne. Okay. One is Koh-i-Noor and one is Darya-i-Noor, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the river of light and the mountain of light. Koh-i-Noor literally means the mountain of light. William Dalrymple has written a very interesting history of the diamond itself. Right? The diamond itself carries a lot of history.
The Koh-i-Noor.
The Koh-i-Noor diamond. William Dalrymple has written a book specifically on the history of Koh-i-Noor, which is very, very interesting.
The Sikhs had it at one point.
Later on. How the Sikhs got it is another very interesting story.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to come to that later on.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Koh-i-Noor diamond was studied in the Mughal throne from the days of Shah Jahan, and it was called the peacock throne because it was made like a peacock. It looked like a peacock, the throne, with the Mughal emperor sat. So the throne, unfortunately, was dismantled, was broken up, and the diamonds that were taken out and they were basically put into the treasury of the Persians. And when Nadir Shah was killed in his tent in 1747, Ahmad Shah, the young man at the time, the lieutenant, he took the treasury into his custody and took it away.
Okay.
And then he basically launched his own dynasty from Kandahar. His capital was current-day Kandahar, and this dynasty was called later on the Durrani dynasty. He was the first ruler of the Durrani dynasty called Ahmad Shah Abdali, also known as Ahmad Shah Abdali.
Were they religious?
Sorry?
Was he religious? Were they religious?
Well, being religious at the time was a relative question. How religious are you and how much? I mean, they used to pray, they used to fast, they were like practicing Muslims.
Okay.
But when it came to their politics, how religious was it? It's an open question. Okay, kings are mostly pragmatic. Kings do things not necessarily for religious reasons. At times they can become religious and do things according to religious principles, but they don't always, due to pragmatic reasons, they don't always follow religious conventions and moral instructions. So again, to ask this question, a particular king, was he religious? Well, it's a relative question. How religious was he? I mean, personally, yes. Every single one of them was religious personally, right? But when it came to state policy, making alliances and making enmities and declaring wars, how religious? For example, Ahmad Shah Abdali, he invaded India multiple times, having known that Indian government at the time was a Muslim government. So he attacked India. But then he also came into India to save the Muslims from the Marathas when he fought the Battle of Panipat in 1761. So this is the same Ahmad Shah who was the ruler of Afghanistan. Okay, and he was spreading into India. He tried to occupy many territories in India and then left them to his governors and went back to Kandahar. Okay, so he occupied Kashmir, he occupied Lahore. There are coins minted. He even occupied Delhi. There are coins minted in his name from Delhi. Ahmad Shah Abdali, right? There are coins minted in the names of Nadir Shah, the invader, from Delhi. I have them in my collection. I'll show them to you.
So that means that they did settle for. These weren't just invasions where they looted and left.
Yeah.
They if you're going to mint coins somewhere, right? It means that you
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Your coins can be minted as an invader, as a temporary measure to establish your power, because no one knew how long they will stay in this conquered territory.
When we say temporary, what do we mean?
Like 2 years, 1
Okay,
year.
that's significant. Of course.
1 or 2 years.
That's significant
So
enough.
so Nadir Shah minted coins in India, in the Indian territory, for a year or two.
Okay.
Right? We have those coins from Delhi, we have those coins from Lahore, we have those coins from some other cities in the Indian subcontinent, major capitals, right? So Nadir Shah, even Peshawar, there are coins minted at Peshawar in the name of Nadir Shah, the Persian invader, right? But did he settle in these places? Did he establish government in these places in the name of the Persian, of Sharid Empire? Absolutely not. He left, he looted, and he left.
Okay.
So long as they stayed there, they did mint coins in these territories. And the reason why they would mint coins in these territories is to establish their hold. Okay, you cannot be taken serious by the masses in these lands if coins are not minted in your name. So one of the first things an invader at this time would do is to mint coins and get the khutbah read in his name at the Jummah. At the time of Jummah.
Yeah.
Okay, these are the two things every ruler would do after taking territory to establish his power and his hold on the territory. Okay, so after this invasion, the Mughals had lost much prestige, and then what followed was local rebellions. Okay, because the Mughals had now lost their prestige and the center was weakened. Mughal military was weakened, Mughal treasury was exhausted. Okay, and at best Mughal ro'ab, like your sense of awe, right? It was gone. People lost fear of the Mughal Empire, and then what happens? You get rebellions in the Punjab. The Sikhs, they rise and they want to take the Punjab. Okay, and they took much territory in the Punjab region. And then the Marathas from central India, okay, they rise and they want to take as much territory as they can because the Mughal army is now weak, right? So they know Mughal army is not going to fight them, and even if it fights them, it's not going to be able to defeat them because it has no money and they don't have salaries to pay the soldiers, right?
Yes.
So then we had other powers rising, the Jats, okay, they also basically rose in rebellion. Then we had the British in the Bengal region, current day Calcutta, also known as Fort William, right?
Yeah.
The British were watching very carefully and they were waiting for their opportunity to take some territory, okay? And they happened to be in one of the most fertile regions of India, Bengal. Bengal was the breadbasket of India because it was agriculturally and industrially rich. A lot of the revenue for the Mughal Empire was coming from Bengal, Orissa and Bihar and the Punjab. Okay, these were the agricultural hubs of the Mughal Empire. These are the breadbaskets, right? This is where the revenue was coming from. So the Punjab was taken by the Sikhs, okay, and later on Bengal and the other two provinces, Bihar and Orissa, were also taken by the British, and the Mughals basically lost their revenue, and then there was nothing left. So after Muhammad Shah was defeated by Nadir Shah in 1739, he lived on for another 9 years. He dies in 1748, leaving behind his son Ahmad Shah. Ahmad Shah comes to power for 6 years, who rules from 1748 to 1754. Ahmad Shah was a relatively noble king. He wasn't like his father, but he didn't live long enough.
So this is Nadir Shah's son.
No, this is Muhammad Shah's son,
Muhammad
the
Shah's
Mughal
son.
emperor.
Yeah.
Okay, Muhammad Shah
Was Mughal, of
died
course, yeah.
in 1748, having ruled for nearly 29 years.
Fine.
Okay, after the invasion of 1739, he had lost any desire to, do anything. I mean, he had no desire anyway in the first place, right?
Yeah.
But he had completely lost his respect and honor and dignity as an emperor. So
So Ahmed Shah is in power now. His
no,
son.
Ahmed,
His
Ahmed
son.
Shah the Mughal, not
The
Ahmed Shah
Mughal.
Abdali.
Yeah.
People conflate the two, and they were both contemporaries, by the way.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there is Ahmed Shah the Mughal.
It's understandable. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Ahmad Shah the Mughal, he
6
rules
years.
from 1748 to 1754. Okay?
6 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So then he dies, and his son Azizuddin Alamgir II comes to power.
Okay.
Okay? He rules for another from 1754 to 1759. He rules for nearly 5 years. Okay? It was in 1759 when his son, called Shah Alam II, takes power into his hand, but he doesn't have much power left anyway, unfortunately, because what happened at this time, there was a huge incident or event that took place in Bengal at the time. So while all of this is happening at the center, Bengal as a province is being ruled by a bunch of Shia, originally Persian governors. Okay, one of them was Murshid Quli Khan, okay, who was a governor, who was appointed as the governor at the time of Aurangzeb Alamgir. He was Shia, okay, and he tried to make Bengal like a Shia entity, right? At least when it comes to the elite. So the elite in Bengal, who were ruling Bengal at the time, were the Shia. They were Shia in their religious affiliation and inclination, and they originated from current-day Najaf, Iraq. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they were ruling, and they're quite effective in ruling. Okay. But when the British were trying to get some leverage on taxes from them, right? They resisted. Now, when the British and the Nawabs, the rulers of Bengal, fell out with each other, at the time there was a young man called Nawab Sirajuddaulah who was ruling Bengal as the governor, as the Mughal governor. Now, these governors by this time are already semi-independent. You know why?
Leading to the princely states. and stuff.
Exactly, leading up to the princely states, because the center has become weakened already. In particular, because of Nadir Shah's invasion
Interesting.
and of the decline that followed afterwards, right? And the details, again, you will have to see in books. What we are giving you are glimpses, very small glimpses into what actually happened. So in Bengal, we had Nawab Sirajuddaulah who fell out with the British. The British, they wanted to reduce the taxes, and they said, no, you must pay the taxes to the empire, or more. And they were very powerful. The Mughals were very powerful. In Bengal, the governor had an army of 50,000 men. So long story short, a battle between the British and the governors of Bengal take place, and this battle is called the Battle of Plassey.
Very
It takes
famous.
place in 1757.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 years before Azizuddin Alamgir II dies.
Plassey is where we have Robert Clive, right?
Clive fights Sirajuddaulah.
Yeah.
So Clive has 5,000 men with him. Sirajuddaulah has an army of 50,000 men. But then Sirajuddaulah had a traitor in his ranks called Mir Jafar. Mir Jafar was, again, one of his distant family members who didn't like the governor, who was a young man in his early 20s, who was a tyrant, who was also a man of no noble character. William Dalrymple shed some light on his character in his book Anarchy. Sirajuddaulah, for some reason, is painted as a hero in the Indian subcontinent history, but he was nothing like a hero. As far as the sources are concerned, he was debauched as well, right? And he was a young man in his early 20s and very inexperienced. So he fought Clive.
Yeah.
Okay, in 1757, and this battle is called the Battle of Plassey. Clive, Robert Clive, who was a British East India Company official, he had 5,000 men with him. So he managed to buy off Mir Jafar, the
traitor
army, the traitor guy, the army guy of Nawab Sirajuddaulah, right? because Mir Jafar was promised governorship. Once Siraj-ud-Dawla is defeated, you would be made the governor.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, long story short, in spite of the fact that Nawab Siraj-ud-Dawla had 50,000 men behind him, he lost the battle. Okay, and there are many reasons given why he lost the battle and how Mir Jafar actually made him lose the battle. Right, so the Battle of Plassey was lost. Clive could not believe his luck. He could not believe his eyes and he could not believe his fortune that he has managed to do something no British official had even dreamed of before him.
And Bengal at this stage
is the richest
the
province of the Mughal Empire. Yeah. So now Clive has become the dominant military force in Bengal. Even though the Mughal army is much more powerful and much bigger than the British East India Company forces.
And I believe that the painting at Powys Castle,
Yeah,
in Wales,
yeah,
shows a very polite version of this.
where the Mughal emperor is giving
he's handing him the Diwan.
Okay, now
Right.
that's another incident that we're going to come to.
That's not Plassey.
That's the Treaty of Allahabad. It's called the Treaty of Allahabad.
So that's not Plassey.
No, that's
Okay.
Buxar. That's the Battle of Buxar. The Battle of Buxar followed after
That's where the
Battle
Diwan
of
is
Plassey.
handed, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Diwan is handed, not. It's like an agreement between the East India Company and the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II.
Yes.
And
That's where it gets...
by this agreement, the Mughal Emperor is handing over taxing rights to the East India Company of 3 provinces: Bengal,
Yeah.
Bihar, and Orissa.
And they become the richest.
They become the richest entity after that.
This is like one of the main events in British history.
And the Indian history.
Yeah.
This was the greatest blow to the Mughal Empire. This, if anyone wants to say when did the Mughal Empire actually politically, economically fall, I would say 1765, the Treaty of Allahabad. That was the final nail in the coffin of the Mughal Empire.
And what's funny is that the painting shows he's handing over the Diwan in a very like regal manner, etc. What actually happened is they grabbed him, they take him to the tent, put a gun to his head, and he basically hands it over.
Yeah,
so it's not the way they depict it as well.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. I mean, it's the whole history is so unbelievable, and one thinks that how can this happen, in spite of the fact that Muslims were so strong, the Mughals had so much strength, and the military. It's the leadership. Okay, you need lions to lead. You need lions to rule, right?
I think there's
when you have cowards ruling who are busy in their usual pastimes and they're not into ruling and managing, then unfortunately this is what happens. Every time you see in Muslim history a dynasty flourished and made progress was due to the impetus of sultans and strong rulers. And as soon as weak rulers came in, as soon as they started to make stupid decisions, they became weaker and weaker and eventually lost everything they had. Okay, and we can see that today. Most Muslim rulers in the world today are weak. They are weak. They are not weak because they don't have power. They are weak because they are mentally weak. They don't find the courage to speak the truth when it has to be spoken. They don't find the courage to confront the enemy. They don't find courage to unite the Muslims upon Quran and Sunnah or upon our principles or our values, right? So unfortunately, this is exactly what was lacking in India at the time. Muslims are completely dispersed. Okay?
I think this is very, even for me, it's very inspirational because obviously, as you know very well, and as the people can probably tell by some of my inaccurate comments in the episode, Indian history has not been my field of, focus in studying history. It's not been like one of my main areas of focus. I've listened to some podcasts and stuff like that, done a little bit of reading, but it's inspiring and it shows that we need to read, we need to educate ourselves much more on Indian history. Even as Muslims, the Mughals are very, and I think just from even some of the things you're mentioning, there's so many lessons that we can all learn. I mentioned this one of the previous podcasts. One of my mashayikh from Saudi, for example, is mentioning in the Arab world, we don't know anything about the Mughals, and and Islamic history in India. We
I
don't know
think we
much,
need to do
right?
some stuff in Arabic as well if we can, inshallah.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
Maybe you can be that
we
person.
need to get that stuff down though first in the heads. Inshallah.
No,
Be
but
good.
look, the purpose
I've
of
been meaning to read Dalrymple's books. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many books that I need to read. It's just that I've got a whole long list. It's what all of us have. You know, when you want to read so many books,
Yeah.
you don't know when you're going to get to it. But
Yeah.
his books are definitely.
Yeah.
I've read some of the Anarchy.
Yeah.
But it's something that definitely needs to be done. Actually, he's got a podcast which I have listened to, and
The Empire podcast.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
very, very
where he
interesting.
does some good stuff.
I haven't had the time and the privilege to listen to many of those episodes, but I have heard great things about that podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think Dalrymple is a very good author.
He's a good.
Okay, I don't always agree with all his conclusions.
He's
but
not a dry historian. That's what's
No,
good
he's not.
about
He's-
him. you know.
he's very readable.
He's
Very
readable.
readable.
He's
Yeah.
know. So I
And
mean,
he's not a colonial apologist.
yeah.
You know,
yeah.
he's very direct on what history is.
I think part of that comes from historians who, like, if you just look at him and you listen to him, the guy likes India. you know.
Oh
those-
yeah, he loves
you know,
he loves India. He has given most of his life to India. He lives in India.
Yeah. He's. I was gonna say he's lived there, or he lives there, and
Yeah.
he's really he's like that.
Once,
he's a white Mughal.
Yeah, he's a white Mughal. Yeah, that would be a very good putting it. If William Dalrymple is watching, we think you are a white Mughal. You are an embodiment of the book you have written yourself, and that's not a bad thing, of course.
No, I think
at the
you'll
same
find
time,
it.
once he was writing on Tipu Sultan, and he posted an image on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
Reading a book. And I knew exactly what that book is because I had the same book in my library, and I recognized the cover by the colors. And I tweeted, "This is that book." And he was amazed. He was very surprised that how did you even know the book? Because I had the book. So he was reading this book titled "Confronting Colonialism." Okay, Confronting Colonialism. It's a history of Tipu Sultan and his father Hyder Ali, right? Which is also a very powerful episode that we want to discuss, possibly in injunction. Or in conjunction, sorry, to this particular podcast, because they are also part of the decline, and they tried to cause another rise, another incline. Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan are two individuals that must be studied very carefully. I am trying to do it. I've done some studies into it. We have even published some of our research work with the Royal Asiatic Society, the Cambridge University. They have published one of my research papers that I co-authored with Nidin Olikara. Actually, Nidin Olikara is the real scholar. I'm just an assistant who assisted him in this work. He found a manuscript that belonged to Tipu Sultan's library with the Asiatic Society of Calcutta in their collection. In this manuscript, Tipu Sultan had personally patronized someone to draft designs of medals that he intended to give to his military and civilian ranks. Amazingly. Very modern stuff. Very, very modern stuff. Very modern for the 18th century. He was far ahead of his opponents and his counterparts in this. Right?
There's a lot. I mean, we'll do a whole episode on Tipu Sultan.
Inshallah. We should
inshallah.
do an episode on Tipu Sultan and discuss some of his characteristics.
Did we have anything left here for the decline?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There is some left, and of course details can be found in books. So the Battle of Plassey was a very huge blow to the Mughal Empire in 1757. And because the governor of Bengal lost this battle to the British became very bold, the East India Company. When we say the British, we're talking about a trading company called the East India Company.
I think we should clarify as well, because I know that, some years ago I had this understanding as well. The East India Company, even though perhaps, some people in government may have held shares in the East India Company as well, but it was literally like Amazon.
Yes.
It was like Tesla.
100%.
It was a trading company.
Absolutely.
It wasn't the British government.
No, it wasn't.
Right?
And William Dalrymple makes this point beautifully, that this is like a trading company.
It's like Amazon. It's like Tesla. It's like
Exactly.
Asda. Going and
Exactly.
deciding we're gonna basically
Sainsbury's.
Yeah.
It's like Sainsbury's or Tesco going into India and taking territory. Literally, it was like that.
Yeah.
So there were boards of governor. There was a board of governors stationed at London who ruled India. Okay,
Yeah.
and of course there were shares in that company that belonged to MPs and influentials here, but it was a trading company that came to rule India, unfortunately, right, for nearly 100 years. Okay,
And after the mutiny, that's when, okay, now we have.
yeah. So they ruled,
You know.
I would say the East India Company came to power for exactly 100 years. From 1757, the Battle of Plassey,
To 1857.
when they woke up to this power and this influence, and then in 1857, when the Indian Mutiny was over.
Do you think that's accurate to say? Yeah. So they technically ruled for 100 years.
Yes, because
What
after
about before the stuff they were doing?
no, before they were just a trading company.
Trading
they were,
company.
They were.
Oh, you say when you say rule, you mean governmental rule?
Yeah,
type of thing.
they became direct rulers
Okay.
of territory in India.
Okay.
Okay, after 1757, after the loss of the Battle of Plassey,
Fine.
right, they became direct de facto rulers of Bengal, Bihar, Orissa. Okay, because they defeated the governor
Yeah.
of Bengal. So when they took this territory, the Mughals woke up to it. They said, "Hold on, what the hell? What happened there? We lost Bengal, so we need to go and recover it."
Okay.
So the Mughals now,
This is after Plassey now.
this is after Plassey,
Yeah.
the Mughals now prepare. They prepare for another battle. Okay, and now there are three Mughal armies that want to fight the British East India Company. Okay, the Emperor himself, which is Shah Alam II, who is by now, who is the emperor. His father, Azizuddin Alamgir II, has died in 1759, and he becomes the next emperor. He becomes the next emperor. Okay, and by this time he's the emperor, and he wants to recover his empire, right? And Bengal is lost to the British East India Company, so he wants to do something about it. So he gets the governor of Awadh, Nawab Shajauddaulah, very powerful figure. He's Shia also, Persian originally. He has his own Mughal army, the emperor, and then the army of the governor of Bengal. So these are three Mughal armies, technically Mughal, okay, that join hands with the emperor, and they go to fight the East India Company in this famous battle called the Battle of Buxar. Okay, that took place in 1764. And the East India Company forces are led by a very famous general called General Hector Munro. Okay, he was the leading general of this particular army. Okay, and the battle was lost. Long story short, the battle, three Mughal armies lost the battle. Again, the details you have to see why, because they were divided. They themselves are divided, right? There was a lot of infighting, and there were a lot of spies and hypocrites that were working within the Mughal system that caused this battle to be lost.
This is when it rained as well, right?
I am not too sure about the details.
One of the battles, it rained, and Robert Clive, they took advantage because they had covered their guns
and
and
the Mughals couldn't do it. I'm not sure if this is the one. I read it.
It was either this or Plassey. I can't remember.
It could be one of them. It definitely rings the bell. But I don't know which one it is. But anyway, the Battle of Buxar is lost. Okay, and three Mughal armies are defeated, and the result was the Treaty of Allahabad, 1765. 1765, when the Mughal emperor, himself had to hand over taxing rights to the British Empire.
And in one moment, the East India Company probably becomes the richest company in the world.
100%. And they had to pay the Mughal emperor. They had to send their part of the share to the Mughal emperor. They were technically, the British East India Company became Mughal vassals. The treaty basically constituted an agreement that you will now be taxing these three provinces on behalf of the Mughal emperor. It's not like this territory is yours, but technically, practically speaking, the British East India Company knew, and the Mughals knew, that they have lost these three provinces. And after that, the British East India Company became a real power because they got their hands on this money, and later on, their policies were very oppressive. They were traders. They were traders. They were merchants. Okay?
Many Indians.
And Tipu Sultan later on called them kotidars, or basically hoarders. Right? They were basically hoarders. They didn't care about the people. They didn't care about the masses, the Bengalis and the Biharis.
People were being worked to death and stuff.
People were being worked to death. There were famines, man-made famines that were discovered within no time after they came to power. So the British East India Company rule was an absolute catastrophe for the people of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa, because millions of people died due to their oppressive, selfish, racist policies. Because they even looked down on the locals. Okay, the racism was not fully established within the British circles at this time. It became more prominent later on, in particular after Tipu Sultan was defeated in 1799. This is when the British woke up to their potential and they realized, hold on, we are civilizationally superior, our religion is superior, our color is superior. We are white and these are blacks, right? They are blackies. They call the Indians blackies, right? They didn't use the word Negro necessarily in India, but they used the word blackies in India. And William Dalrymple talks about it quite extensively.
I mean,
racism.
my bachelor's dissertation was on racist and dehumanizing rhetoric in the Morant Bay Uprising of 1865, which obviously followed the mutiny. And I believe I did speak about a link between India and Morant Bay, which was obviously in Jamaica, and this the racism that was.
I remember reading it. It was quite interesting.
Yes, so the racism that was
racism
there.
was
by popular figures, by the way. We're talking about like
racism was the norm throughout the British Empire.
Popular British philosophers we're talking about.
Yes, 100%.
So
So the decline
after this, the Mughal emperors are basically just
absolutely
there for show, isn't
now
it?
1765 when the Treaty of Allahabad took place. Shah Alam II, who remained the emperor until 1805. So he became the emperor in 1759 and he remained the emperor, albeit in name, until 1805. He was even blinded by a certain Abdul Qadir Rohela, which is another very disturbing episode in his history. The Mughal emperor became so weak in the late 18th century that he had to seek assistance and protection from the Marathas. So the Marathas came in and they occupied Delhi for a while to protect the Mughal emperor against some of his own vassals and allies, right? So the empire had crumbled to the extent that the Mughal emperor became a puppet of his own courtiers, right? So, of course, time is not on our side again, and we want to completely cut down some of these details. But again, I just want to say Shah Alam II was one of the most disturbing figures in Mughal history. Okay, people talk about Bahadur Shah Zafar, the last one, who was imprisoned in Burma after the loss of 1857 mutiny. Okay, but I think Shah Alam II was more unfortunate than Bahadur Shah Zafar in many respects. Shah Alam II, he tried to fight his way in to power. He didn't succeed. He made many attempts. Then his generals tried to play him. His own vassals were against him. He was captured and blinded and then was rescued by Marathas. And then Marathas took advantage of his weakness and occupied Delhi. And Delhi remained in Marathas' hands until 1803, until the British came and defeated the Marathas who occupied Delhi in the Battle of Aligarh that took place in 1803. And the Marathas are ousted. So Delhi became free. And this is the first time when the British occupy the heart of the Muslim empire in India, Delhi. They take the capital of Muslim India, first time in history in 1803 after they defeated the Marathas. And since then, they ruled from Delhi. Of course, Delhi was the capital of the British Empire in India, and they ruled from Delhi. And for another 50 years, they ruled, and there was Indian Mutiny of 1857, which is a very, very famous episode in the history of British India.
You could perhaps do an episode on the mutiny as well.
Yeah, we should do an episode specifically on the Indian Mutiny. So Shah Alam II died, I guess a very sad man, in 1805, right? And then his son Akbar II, Akbar Thani, came to power, who ruled for a while, ruled from the palace. He didn't have any territory or any army, right? He was completely at the mercy of the British administrators at Delhi, right? And then came to power his son Bahadur Shah Zafar, who was also an Urdu poet, an accomplished Urdu poet, an excellent Urdu poet, who was also an associate of poets like Ibrahim Zouk and Mirza Ghalib, and his poetry was also very impressive. Okay,
Interesting.
one of his verses I really love: Zafar Adami usko na janiyega, ho wo kaisa hi sahib fahm o zaka, jise aish mein yaad khuda na rahi, jise taish mein khof khuda na raha. Oh Zafar, do not consider a man a true man who does not remember Allah when he is in he's prosperous, and he doesn't fear Allah when he's angry. Right? This is one of his lines, or his two lines. So he was an accomplished poet. As a result of the Indian Mutiny, which is again another episode in itself,
Okay.
he was captured once Delhi fell to the British again. Right? They captured him. They killed some of his sons. Okay, his power was taken from him. Whatever remained in his hand, his palace was completely dismantled, destroyed. The Red Fort. Okay, only the walls survived, the outer walls. Inside, the palace was completely demolished by the British. The city of Delhi was looted again by the British forces. Okay, many catastrophes and disasters took place. Many massacres were conducted, to the extent that the Queen Victoria at the time, had to intervene to stop the massacres of the natives, because those natives, some of them had committed massacres against British women and children, right? So the British forces wanted revenge, and in their revenge they went too far, and the news reached Queen Victoria, and she had to stop it. She had to intervene and stop it. One of the outcomes was that Bahadur Shah Zafar was captured and sent to Rangoon, current day Burma or Myanmar, and he died there. He's buried there. And this was the end of the Mughal Empire. Eventually, this was the eventual final end of the Mughal Empire, when last emperor. Okay, and then the Mughal emperor, one of his verses or that are attributed to him, he said, "Kitna bad naseeb hai Zafar dafan ke liye, do gaz zami bhi na mili kuए yaar mein." How unfortunate is Zafar for burial that he couldn't find 2 yards of land in his own territory.
SubhanAllah.
He died in Burma, and he
Yeah.
was buried in Burma.
Yeah.
Right? So this is the end of the Mughal Empire. So I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely. It's been very beneficial. Inshallah ta'ala, we can continue this. And the idea that we have is that we'd like to do episodes on specific figures. So we'll do one on Tipu Sultan. We can do one on Bahadur Shah Zafar by himself. We can do individual ones that go a bit more into detail in this way, inshallah ta'ala.
Definitely.
That will also save us from
100%.
going off topic as well, because we'll be focusing on one person.
Absolutely.
Right?
But
Inshallah
that
ta'ala.
cannot...
But that's still beneficial.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Brothers and sisters, Jazakumullah khairan for watching. Do subscribe, inshallah ta'ala, and watch out for future episodes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.